Hello and welcome to the 23rd episode of the Meet the Entrepreneur podcast. This is ARTEEN ZAHIRI and I'm the co-host of this feature along with RUMEER KESHWANI. Today we are speaking with Kristy Carabello, founder and CEO of Vertige, the vertigo tracker bringing balance back to your mind, body, and soul. With the Vertige app, vertigo sufferers can discover potential triggers and track episodes with the click of a button. Kristy, would love to hear you talk about your background. What is Vertige? How it was founded? And yeah, feel free to go as far back as you just kind of tell the whole story, because this is something I know is really personal to you. So we'd love to hear you dive in.
Okay, perfect. So my background is not in tech whatsoever. I actually started in PR and marketing and then kind of segued into account management and cosmetics. So I worked for Benefit Cosmetics as an account manager and actually oversaw all the Ultas in my territory. So I was helping to hire people who represented us in store, sales strategy, trainings, all different things. But it was so interesting because at that point, Ulta was not what it is now. This is going back to like 2009. So Benefit had just started doing these brow bars in Ulta, and Ulta had this vision of opening 100 stores every year for the next 5 years. So Benefit got in just at that perfect time, and we were seeing like double-digit comp growth year after year, and it was just this like super exciting time to be involved in that. And I was traveling a ton, and after a certain amount of time, being a road warrior kind of takes its toll on you. So I left Benefit and then started working for another cosmetic company as a brand manager and oversaw the QVC, HSN, and TSV in Canada, their accounts. And then it was kind of time to make a change. I was just like itching for something new. So I wanted to go back to like my PR roots. And that's when I met you, is when I started doing independent contracting for a PR company. And we were dealing with a lot of tech companies and startups. And I don't know, I was just like so fascinated by it. Plus I have my personal history. So my health history kind of dates back around the time I was leaving Benefit. I started having these like just sporadic vertigo episodes. And I guess a little prior to that, I was having ear fullness, tinnitus on one side, and was told it was just allergies, take some allergy medicine. And I'm not a big medicine taker, so I kind of just started doing my own thing for it. But then these vertigo episodes were happening, and one of the worst, before I knew what it was, I was driving home. I parked at the end of our block. I called my husband. I was like, you have to come and meet me outside. Like, something is not right. And when I'm walking up the block, he's like, you were walking sideways. Like, what is going on here? And it was such a scary feeling because I didn't know what was going on. And it continued to get worse. And then I finally went to the University of Pennsylvania and had some balance testing done. And that's when I was confirmed diagnosed with Meniere's disease, because it showed that on top of the ear fullness, the tinnitus, I had hearing loss in my right ear. So Meniere's is an inner ear disorder that actually affects the fluid in your ear, which then affects your vestibular system. So at my worst, I would say about 8 to 10 times a month, I would have these vertigo episodes where I would the whole room would be spinning, and I would be on the sofa, unable to get up, unable to open my eyes. And it's just like a scary, anxiety-inducing feeling. So that was kind of the worst of it when this was happening. And I started, seeing a doctor, kind of being able to manage those symptoms. And I was taking some medication. And again, I'm not like a huge fan. So I ended up like starting to do a habit journal, like that habit tracking. And I was tracking everything from like, screen time, hormones, foods I was ingesting, just exercise, a bunch of different things, meditation, mindfulness, and started to notice these triggers. So, like food triggers, I can't eat chickpeas or avocado, or, spending too much time on the screen, or positionally, sometimes it can trigger an episode. So I'm doing this all by hand. And then I started looking for an app that could track. And there's a million migraine tracking apps, but there were none to track vertigo. And that's when I was just like, well, I'm going to make it. So that kind of brings us to the end of last year where I hooked up with a developer and, we just launched not too long ago. So yeah, it's been a really exciting venture and a lot of learning and trying to make the app, as simple as possible for people to be able, we took into account like the fonts, the colors, just because when you have vertigo and your eyes are kind of going crazy, your whole world is turned upside down. I just wanted to make it as simple as possible for people to be able to enter this information and then, hopefully try to find their triggers in this weekly and bi-weekly reporting that we have done.
That's really astonishing. I didn't know that there was so many like specific things that could trigger an episode like that. Yeah, maybe
Gosh, yeah.
maybe Kristy, like take a step back and explain to our audience what exactly is vertigo, because I think a lot of people like mistake it as vertigo being kind of like a condition or a disease itself. But based on what you're saying, it sounds like it's actually more of a symptom of a condition. In this case, for you, Meniere's disease. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, that's a great point. Vertigo is more of a symptom. So, with Meniere's, and there's so many other things too. There's vestibular migraine, there's BPV, BPPV, and there's just so many different things that can cause these vestibular issues. And I think as of right now, there's like 35% of adults aged 40 and older, which is approximately like 69 million Americans, have had some sort of vestibular dysfunction. And so it can range from a feeling of off balance, of just, something doesn't feel quite right. It could be like some brain fog, it could be tired, but then vertigo, if you're having like a full-fledged vertigo episode, most of the time it would be the world is spinning around you. It's hard to open your eyes. You have, this awful feeling of nausea. You'll probably get sick most of the time. And yeah, it's just, it's scary because I think before you have it under control, you also don't always know when that is going to happen. So I've had it happen while I was driving in the car and had to pull over. You could just be out walking and something could trigger and you don't know what to do. So I find a lot of people have this like excess enhanced anxiety around it as well.
Yeah, it's a terrifying thought to think that you could have that episode while you're like driving a car or doing something dangerous, like operating a forklift or something. Yeah, so I see how important it is to like track everything so you can get a better understanding of it, what causes it, how to deal with it. How's that journey been like for you? That process of like understanding it and being able to better, deal with it and prevent it from happening, all that.
Yeah, I'd also like to know, just like what are the current options, right? Like outside, because it seems like you decided to like take matters into your own hands because of like maybe there aren't enough options in the marketplace, or like the options just aren't there aren't enough variety, or whatever.
Yeah. So I'm part of a couple of Facebook groups, and I see these people who are kind of where I was, and it's interesting to look back because the first thing is pretty much like, oh, you have vertigo, take meclizine, which is kind of like a Benadryl Dramamine mix. So that's what I find like is usually the first step. Like, okay, you have it, take some meclizine, see what happens. And then there are different things because it's this imbalance in the fluid in your ear. I think once you get to the next step, there are water pills, like a diuretic that they'll give you to try to like drain that water and see if that helps. When it comes to vestibular migraine, which I have found I have as well, they're really very similar. So they kind of go hand in hand a lot of the time. That can be, there's different medications for that. So a lot of it is just here are these different medications, and kind of good luck. And that's what I see a lot of these people in the Facebook groups are, it's taking them a while to even see a doctor. It's taking a while for them to get a diagnosis, to have people understand, because this is considered like an invisible disease because you can't see it. So people are just like, oh, you're making it up, or oh, you're anxious, or there's all these things, and people can't grasp it all the time on the outside because they can't understand what you're going through. So in my case, like, yes, I went on medication because it was at a point where I was just like, I have no other option right now. And then I started finding some of these food triggers, like, making that chickpea pasta. So I'm making like this chickpea pasta salad, and I'm just like popping in the pasta as I'm eating, as I'm making it. And then within a half hour, all of a sudden I'm like getting vertigo. And, it's not until it's gross, but I had to get sick for it to make me feel better. So, I started identifying things that way by tracking. And then because there's so much anxiety around it, and stress is such a trigger for vertigo, the mindfulness and exercise and yoga has been huge for me. I got my yoga teacher certification not too long ago. I honestly feel the best during and after doing yoga. And I stopped working out and doing everything like that for a while because I had so much anxiety. And I think actually being home with COVID and starting to do stuff at home instead of going out, because I was scared to go to a gym. Like, what happened if I overexerted myself? And I actually was at a yoga class in a gym, and at the end got vertigo and had to like walk out to my car very carefully and there's also a medication that you can take either right before or during an episode that helps kind of for me within like 20 minutes will help clear it up for the most part. So there's a lot of factors, and low sodium diet is a big one for Meniere's because of that fluid that needs to be kind of at a low level. So yeah, there's a lot of different factors. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's like really it's really interesting just to hear about, because it's not something that I've heard too many people talk about at all. When when I was when ARTEEN and I were still at Babson, I founded a company with someone who was celiac, and he'd been celiac his whole life. He wanted to basically make solutions for people who couldn't consume flour, and oftentimes he was going out and like trying to plug into communities, right? Like how you talk about this Facebook group. Like what does that landscape look like for you, right? Someone who's trying to get in touch or like provide or like be an advocate in this like community of people who have vertigo or think they have vertigo, or kind of like live with people who have this. What does that look like, and what does the landscape look like as someone who's trying to, I guess, like provide a solution or build something in the space?
Well, the Facebook groups, because I've been in these people's shoes, and and I still have, luckily, knock on whatever, I haven't had a full-blown vertigo episode in a while now. So, but I still get the off balance and things like that. So I can go in, I feel like I can go in and help people and comment and kind of like give them suggestions, because it's a very busy group. I mean, and you're seeing people who think they have it, but they're not quite sure yet. So they're just like kind of trying to feel stuff out and asking what people have been through to people who have been diagnosed. I mean, it can be heartbreaking. There are actually people, and it was just a few months ago that I felt it was kind of increasing, the amount of people that said they don't even want to live anymore because of how bad this is and how it's affected their life, their work, their family. So, when I first had the idea for Vertige, I went to the Facebook group first to ask people, like, is this something you think you would be interested in and you would use? And I got a great response. And there was only one person who said, I still want to track everything by hand. That was, and I was like, hey, if that's what you want, Absolutely, go for it. But yeah, so it's been so helpful to have them as like that sounding board. And even that initial post was kind of just like, well, if you are interested, what are the kind of things you would want to see or track? And I got great feedback from it, which was wonderful. And there is a vestibular disorder association called VEDA, who is pretty prominent, and they are actually hosting Balance Awareness Week come September 18th to the 24th. And they have ambassadors and things like that. So, you know, I think my focus is kind of between the Facebook group. I've been trying to connect with people one-on-one, and actually talking to them a little bit more lately about like exercise and yoga and how it's helping them. And I've gotten a really interesting response that, you know, there are the people who can't exercise. I mean, for fear of having vertigo, they can't bend their head down without getting vertigo or having like the spins, to other people who are just like, I need to do it every day. And there was a woman from, where was she from? I can't remember, like British Columbia or somewhere, that I just spoke to recently. And she was just like, I have to do yoga and exercise. And if I don't, like, I can tell within a day that, you know, I'm slacking and I'm starting to like feel off balance and everything like that again. So so to pretty much like sum that up, I think, you know, to be an advocate between the Facebook group, talking to people, really trying to like form this community around Vertige and around them, plus VEDA, you know, are the two ways that I'm kind of going about it right now.
Yeah, it's awesome. Great that you're super tapped in and I'm sure got a lot of great feedback that kind of helped you design the product itself. And on that note, now that, you know, very recently you've launched on the App Store, how has, I guess, adoption been? Have you gotten like your initial early users? How are people engaging with the platform so far? How's that been?
Yeah, things have been good so far. I mean, I think I'm still working on it a little. I pretty much only advertised and like told the people in the groups so far about the app, and like anything else has just kind of come from not me putting the word out myself. So I've gotten great feedback so far. It's interesting and cool because they entered all their info into a daily summary. And it's from screen time, they can list the foods, they can list their medications, they actually list their vertigo episodes and the severity of it and the duration of it. So then that populates into a weekly and bi-weekly report that it's a bar graph showing the duration and severity of the episodes, and then these line graphs showing like 6 different triggers that hopefully these people can start to recognize the trends. But one of the things that I want to really like educate more on is having them take this, and something I want to work on is actually being able to, you know, export that data so they can take it to their doctor and work with their doctor directly, because if maybe they're not seeing something, they can show their doctor what they've been doing, and, you know, they can work together to really put a plan in place to go forward. So people are really liking that option so far.
Yeah, that'd be great. The insights that you get from this are going to be really important. And right now you're just on Apple. Do you have plans to launch to the Android in the near future as well?
I do. I don't have an exact time frame yet, but I do want to, absolutely. Because when I started posting, so then once we were about to launch, I posted in the group for people to go to the landing page and, you know, give me their email information just so I could keep them up to date. And I had some people commenting like, when is it going to come up for Android? Like, keep me in the loop as soon as it's available. So I know there's a need for it. I just wanted to take it step by step to start and, you know, kind of get any kinks out or make the necessary adjustments this way, and then be able to expand after that.
Yeah, nice. I'd love to hear about what else you have planned for the development. Right now, your this main feature of like journal tracking, I think that's like incredibly powerful, like you said. If you like tailor or like focus in on a specific issue or concept with the body, I think that tracking your habits around it like just tells you so much about what you do and like how the things that you do actually impact the your life and like your day and all this stuff. And it's an incredibly powerful concept. Like I'm just thinking like what's like the next level, or like what are the ways to enhance this, something like obviously getting integrated with some of these, like I have like a health sensor, like all of these types of
Yes.
biometric data. I mean, like then that's like taking it obviously to like the next level. And I'm curious to hear like what are your thoughts around that, or like any other cool features or like, ideal, integrations that you have in mind for Vertige.
Yeah, no, and I have thought about that and talked about that recently with somebody. So I feel like that would be amazing to partner with somebody for that. One thing that I just started doing is reaching out to clinical trials, because a lot of these clinical trials for vertigo have the patients handwriting in a diary what their vertigo episodes were. And I was reading something, and I don't even know how it came about, but I was reading and something came up about a clinical trial with vertigo. And then I guess I looked up the clinical trial itself, and then I read down and it said that like, okay, patients are to keep track in a journal. And I was like, oh my gosh, they don't need a journal, they need Vertige. So I have just started recently reaching out to different clinical trials to see how we can partner, because I feel like that would be an amazing way to go and be able to help people at a grander scale too.
I think that's super cool. Reaching out to clinic. I mean, like that's such a smart idea. You should like look up the scientific papers and start like reaching out to the researchers directly. You know what I think
Yeah.
that's such a good idea. Kind
So
of just
there's
bringing that tool there.
Yeah, clinicaltrials.gov is a website, and you can do like a keyword search. So of course I put in vertigo or Meniere's or whatever, and then you can narrow it down by like the United States. You could do the whole world if you really wanted to, but I figure I'll start with the US and then can expand from there. And yeah, I mean, there was actually one that was currently recruiting. So that's another thing. I'm like kind of looking for the ones that are currently recruiting. So I'm getting them ahead of the game. And one of the locations, it had all these different locations throughout the US, and one was like Jefferson in Philadelphia, which is where I'm from. So I reached out to her first. It was a nurse that they had the contact info for. But yeah, I mean, they give you all the details and all the contact information right there. So it's been perfect. So that's kind of one of my things that I'm really excited about that I want to continue to work on.
Yeah, really cool. That's a great use case for this app. That's definitely something that you should explore. I'm curious, Kristy, like, this being your first, I guess, like trying your hand at the first time in the world of like tech startups. Of course, you've been working with other tech startups, but now you're actually doing it yourself. What have been some of the challenges or surprises that you've had to kind of deal with in your journey so far?
I mean, there's definitely been a learning curve, but I don't know. I've always just felt like I feel like my parents always said this, you can do anything. So you can do whatever you set your mind to, or you're gonna learn whatever it is that you want to do. And my sister and I actually had started a side business years ago. We started screen printing t-shirts like that were sustainable out of our parents' basement. And then we kind of worked our way up to creating a 12-piece line of women's clothing made from sustainable fabrics, produced locally in Philadelphia. And we taught ourselves everything along the way. So I'm just kind of taking this same, I learned a lot from that experience. So I'm taken from that. And then when it comes to the tech aspects, I mean, I relied, I think, heavily on the developer, because he was wonderful. And we work together really closely. And yeah, I mean, it's been a really good experience so far and really interesting. I can't say that there was anything like super crazy or I don't know, that just like popped up that stumped me or that I couldn't figure out, or like ask somebody and be able to get around or get an answer to.
Yeah, well, it's very early stage, so maybe like in a year from now we'll have you on again. We'll have all these stories to
Right.
share with us.
Come back to me next year. I'll talk to you next year. We'll talk about that.
Awesome. Yeah, so talk about maybe like what the kind of team is right now. So you mentioned there's a developer that you're working with, but otherwise, is it kind of like a one-woman show? Has it mostly just been you building it all from scratch?
Yep, exactly. It's just me. So yeah, I mean, it's been a lot, but again, I mean, I'm so excited and I feel like it's so needed. And these people, like, and especially when I talk to some of the people from the Facebook groups, it just kind of reiterates why I know I need to do this. Like, I need to help these people. I've been there, so I'm not only like a user of the app, I've been there, like, I know they need help. So I think it just makes it bigger than me. And that's the focus. Like, I know I need to serve these people and help them. And going forward with the app, I also hope to kind of integrate some kind of yoga mindfulness movement. I'm not 100% sure what that looks like yet, but you know, with Balance Awareness Week coming up in September, I was toying with the idea of doing like a balance yoga challenge leading up to that. Just as a way to like build community and get people excited. And some of the people that I've talked to through the group were really into that idea. So I just think that could be something as a way to get people together, have some fun, because this can be a not fun disease at a lot of the time, and kind of build awareness leading up to that Balance Awareness Week.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you're building a community around it. I think maybe even like incorporating into the app like a community feed where other users can ask each other questions and discuss, you know, their experiences or tips using it would also be really cool, given everything else you've talked about.
Yeah,
I'm curious. You know, you've been working a lot with these Facebook groups, and this is something that, you know, millions of people experience. What are like the demographics with these you know, with these community members that you've been working with? Is it like does this affect like certain groups more than others, or is it kind of like varies across like all ages and all you know, all kinds of people? Is there like a pattern or not really?
it's interesting because originally when I started doing research, it looked like there was a pattern. It was happening primarily more so in women, but being a part of and the older, like, I mean, you have, and when I say older, I'm talking probably like 40 to 60. Because I think a lot of times too, when you hear vestibular issues or, you know, dizziness, you could think of like the older generation, like the elderly people who can't walk or they're having these balance issues. But being part of these groups, I'm finding that like more so lately, there's a lot of younger people coming forward in these groups talking about it, and from all over. Like, I feel like I see a lot of people from the UK. Yeah, so it's really, there's no rhyme or reason to it right now. I mean, I think with COVID too, there was an increase of people saying that they were experiencing vertigo. But I don't know if that's an exact correlation, like, or if that will translate into the Meniere's. Another big thing with Meniere's disease is like you can have hearing loss. So, you know, I do have hearing loss in my right ear. But then there are people who have it in one ear, they go bilateral, they'll have it in both ears. So that's a different factor, just the hearing in general. And people are, you know, losing their hearing. And I reached out to somebody in the group to talk about, he commented about like an exercise and how he's very regimented with his exercise. And he responded and he was just like, you know, I'm deaf, so we can't really do a Zoom, but I'm happy to answer questions, like type them out and send them over. So yeah, I just feel like there's so many different factors involved right now, happening to a lot of different people.
Yeah, it's crazy. I just saw a statistic that 40% of US adults experience vertigo at least once in their lifetime. I had no idea it was such a high number, like almost half of all adults in the country. But like you said, it's a silent illness, so you never know.
Right.
There's no way you
And
can see it.
a lot of times, so a lot of things you'll hear too is the crystals in your ears can come dislodged. So then there's something called the Epley maneuver that you can get done at a doctor, like a physical therapy, the chiropractor even, and they kind of like put the crystals back where they're supposed to, and then you'll be okay. So, you know, I've seen that happen where people, they bend over to put something into the dryer and they stand up and they're like, oh my God, I'm all dizzy. And it's the crystals have been dislodged. So that honestly is like the best case scenario that you could have, because you can do an Epley maneuver, get those crystals back in, and then you're okay again. But yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. So I feel like that 40% is probably factoring in some of those people who have just had the crystals and, you know, had it like a one-off.
Yeah, perhaps. It was one thing is like you mentioned, it's you're seeing it more in younger people now, and like more people thinking they have it during COVID. I know screen time. I don't want to get too off track, but I know screen time is one of the triggers you mentioned. I wonder if like now that we live in like a digital age, and like especially with COVID remote environment, people are like pretty much always have a screen in front of them. I wonder if that's had any effect on that. No, really interesting. I think there's much more to be learned about it, and Vertige is going to be really helpful in helping us learn about it, because there's right now like no really structured way for people to track it in a centralized way. No, really
and
cool.
With this screen time, that could be more of that vestibular migraine. So with the vestibular migraine, you're not having any kind of pain, or most of the time not having an aura. It is just strictly like vertigo. So I feel that that could be a big trigger. So maybe some of these younger kids, it's more of the vestibular migraine, and even posture, like your cervical spine. A lot of people end up going to a cervical spine chiropractor, because I know my C1 will get lodged, like kind of get stuck. And that's when I find myself feeling a little bit more dizzy as well. So it could be these kids are hunched over on their phones, you know, and your neck and your posture aren't the way they should be. So hopefully another thing, yoga and, you know, movement can help kind of stretch everybody's spines and, you know, calm them and find this sense of balance again.
Yeah, it's a great point. We've all been sitting down like so much more these last 2 years than before. I gotta start signing up for yoga, because I didn't consider that until you just mentioned it now.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Kristy, it's been good. I know we're a couple minutes over, so I don't want to keep it too long. I guess just very last thing. I guess any kind of parting final words. What would you like to leave our audience with before we wrap this up?
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you so much for having me on. I really just hope that I can help bring more awareness to this disease and work with people. And I just want to keep like onward and upward, keep working and getting bigger and getting it out to more people, so we can help reduce the frequency of vertigo episodes in people who suffer. So I really appreciate you guys.
I love that. And where can people find more information?
Yeah, you can go to vertige.app, our website, and that'll take you to all the different social handles. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and you can follow me at Kristy Joy on Instagram.
Thank you for tuning in to Meet the Entrepreneur. Be sure to follow Startup Society to stay on top of the most exciting startups in the country striving to keep the American dream alive. Until next time, take care.